You probably know the feeling, sweaty, fast breathing, quick heart rate. That's a cortisol spike. It feels awful, and its imbalance is the cause of your anxiety. Rebalance Health's 3-part anxiety system helps address it at the root. Rebalance Health lozenges are natural and designed for optimal absorption, providing 24-hour relief. Live life fully without feeling like you're fighting for it. Get 50% off your first month with code CALM23 at rebalancehealth.com.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi.
And I'm Fruit Loop.
We are going to get started. And first off, we want to wish a very happy birthday to Paige, one of our listeners and one of our Twitter followers. She's a sweetheart. And so we just want to say a big happy birthday to you, Paige. Hope your day's been great.
Hope you got to eat some cake.
Yes, and I hope you still have your party pants on because the day is not over yet. So we did our last podcast on these custody battle papers that Wicked Truths and F-Bombs put out last week. And we got, 30 pages in a 45-minute podcast?
Yeah, there was a ton of information.
Yeah, we haven't even scratched the surface on these. So we're just going to keep continuing this until there's more news for us to do a podcast on. So we're just going to get started. And the first page that we start with tonight is from March 26th of 2007, which is a motion to compel psychological evaluations for persons affecting the parent-child relationship.
Yeah, so it discusses Joe's request that the following persons who reside with the child be ordered to submit to a psychological and psychiatric testing and evaluation. And this by such professionals as the guardian ad litem, who at that time was Tom Ware, determines to be appropriate and in the child's best interest. So, who are those three that he suggests need those evaluations?
Well, the three people that were living with Tylee at that time were Colby, Lori, and Charles. And I think that's a pretty reasonable request. At this point, Joseph Ryan had already submitted to his psychological evaluation. And I think in order to be fair, especially with the allegations involved in what we talked about on the last podcast, which is sexual abuse to Colby and Tylee, I think it was a very reasonable request.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that should have been ordered out of the gate for everybody. I'm not sure why Joseph had to request it with this much, with everything being so contested. It just seems like that would have been standard, but I guess not.
Yeah, and we also see in these documents it's back and forth. They request something from him, and he in turn requests something from them. So,
and I'll tell you, whenever you call your lawyer, especially family court attorneys, I mean, they have to be really wealthy. It is not cheap to get a divorce. And pretty much every time that you reach out to your lawyer and have them send a letter to your ex-spouse's lawyer, it's like $200-$300.
yeah, that money can rack up really quick.
Right. And we know from the papers that we talked about last episode that Joseph at one point had said he had acquired at least $75,000 in debt. And that was before this whole thing was even over. So I'm sure it was well over $100,000 in the end. Just ridiculous.
Yeah. So we jump to one of the next documents. It is motion to remove the guardian ad litem.
This is a really weird thing for me. One set of parents, whether the mom or the dad, they're not going to be super happy with the guardian if one is brought in. And the reason you bring in a guardian is because the parents just can't agree on what's best for the child. You have some divorces where people are able to say, here's how we're going to do it. Let's hire our lawyers, make the cost really small, and then we just go to court for a final hearing. You actually go to mediation. And sometimes you can avoid having to go in and do testimony and that kind of thing. And mediation is really the best way to go because it's the least expensive, and it just means the parents are on the same page. But we've seen they weren't even in the same zip code.
Yeah, this just totally at each other's throats through this whole divorce. And this motion is coming from Lori Vallow, and she's trying to remove Tom Ware as the guardian ad litem. And they list why she's wanting, him to be removed. And they claim that Tom Ware has shown a lack of objectivity, in that he has mischaracterized the statements of persons with significant knowledge of the child's history and condition. He's made false statements to persons with significant knowledge of the child's history so as to influence their statements. And he's refused to permit persons with significant knowledge of the child's history giving free and unfettered statements. So, and I think there's like 5 points that they make in this as to why. And they're all he failed or refused to fulfill his responsibilities. He failed to interview in a reasonable amount of time. He failed, to interview people who had significant knowledge about the child's history and condition in the amount of time. He failed to obtain and review copies of the child's relevant medical and psychological records. So it's just like on and on of things that he's failed.
And at this point, when I was reading the documents, I thought, okay, so Lori brought this motion on. So I'm a little hesitant to really buy into all of it because she manipulates every single person involved in this custody dispute, whether it be, doctors that have done evaluations on Joseph Ryan. But it seems like this guardian ad litem was up to some shenanigans.
Yeah, but then you look at there's a response, and you see that Lori has denied the guardian ad litem access to the kids, right. Tylee and Colby, and the guardian ad litem has to have access to the kids, so she's denied that. So we see another example of her not following court order.
Right, and the lady that did the psychosexual evaluation on Joe Ryan, her name was it Virginia?
Vivian.
I'm sorry, Vivian. And this woman had been in her practice for 30, 35 years. So obviously well-established, not new to doing this at all, but she got sick.
Yep.
And she had cancer and apparently was missing some hearings or deadlines or that sort of thing. And I think initially, who was it? He was going to side with her.
Yeah. So it appeared that Tom Ware and Vivian Lewis had worked together a long time in the system, so they knew each other. And she was a psychologist.
A psychologist, okay.
Yep. And he's a guardian ad litem, so they had worked a lot of cases together. So he was siding with her, and then we get into some other documents.
Right. And one thing to mention is a lot of these guys, I don't know if Virginia was in the mix, but a lot of these guys apparently, after a hard day's work, they would all go out and drink together and hang out together.
Yep.
And I guess that's probably not uncommon. I mean, you do go out with your coworkers. I just kind of found it odd that these guys sort of hang out together after work and do all that. I don't know. I guess to me that just seems like a younger crowd thing. Somebody who is, I don't know if these people are married or not, but I just kind of find it a little inappropriate that these guys are going out and getting drunk. I mean, it's like, at what point do they maybe slip up and start talking about the case? I don't know. That's just kind of my opinion. Just one of those things.
Yeah. And I think we'll address some of this later on with some other documents. But so the next one coming up is a motion for judgment notwithstanding the verdict.
And notwithstanding, that just kind of means in spite of. So, in spite of a judgment, at this point, we think, and some of the pages aren't in here, but we believe at this point there had been a trial, and Lori was given full custody of Tylee. But Joseph Ryan obviously had some issues with how that went down.
Yeah, when we see the rest of these documents and they're just going to keep coming out, there's going to be reason why. I think we'll see that he was worried about his daughter in that environment.
I think we've already seen, but as if we need more reason. But I think Joe just had a book of reasons.
Yeah. So what does this motion? What exactly was it?
Well, essentially, what Joseph's issues were is that he didn't feel that Lori's appointment as the managing conservator was in the best interest of Tylee, and he felt that there was no evidence that Lori was a fit parent to raise the child at that point.
Gotcha.
Right. So, and also there was no evidence about the desires of the child. And when I read that, I thought it was a little odd that somebody, a counselor or a psychologist, had not talked to Tylee about what she wanted. So at this age, Tylee is 5 years old. And so that's really young. And I know when situations happen where there is a bitter custody dispute and they want to find out what the kid wants, I know a lot of times they wait until the kid's about 12, 13, or that's how it used to be. So they have a little bit of understanding about the process of divorce. But 5 years old, you would think that they would at least, flat out say, would you want to spend more time with your dad? Could it be a 50-50 conservator situation? But he's saying they didn't even ask Tylee what she wanted.
Yeah, and I know it'd be hard for her to make a decision, but it seemed like in the documents prior to that we went over that she enjoyed spending time with him.
Right. And I think what's weird for me too, before we go any further, is in hindsight, reading Joe's concerns in this particular motion, it's kind of eerie because everything that he is worried about ultimately happened last year in September.
Yeah.
I mean, probably her whole life, obviously, with her being in and out of the hospital, Lori fudging medical document or symptoms and that sort of thing. But if you go down this list, and we're going to keep going, but I just want to jump in here. It's really, he knew way back in 2007, she's got major issues. And that was confirmed. It was confirmed for us last month when they ultimately found her body. But, oh, man, this really just gives me the willies.
Yeah, I mean, it's statements like respondent, which is Lori, cannot address the emotional and physical needs of the child now and in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a standard accusation that embattled parents make against each other. But in this case, we know the end result.
Yeah, and one of them, she replaces the child in emotional and physical danger. And this kid's 5.
Yeah.
Then you see he says she is not able to parent either of her children, and that's Tylee and Colby.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I mean, he's hitting everything. No evidence about programs available to assist those individuals to promote the best interest of the child.
Yeah, and there was no agency seeking custody. And he also said that her home was unstable. And I think some of the documents that are going to drop later tonight from Wicked Truths and F-Bombs is going to fill in a lot of these gaps about what happened in the Vallow home that supported his statement here.
Yeah. And then you see the acts and omissions of respondent with regard to safety of the child. She's been neglectful and reckless with no reasonable excuse. So this is just, it's hard, like all these things, and everybody is seeing and hearing all this stuff.
Yeah.
and it seems like it falls on deaf ears.
And I think here, where he says that any testimony that the mother and the child have a close relationship is a conclusion and is not evidence in determining the best interest of the child, and is contrary to the jury instruction that they only consider the qualifications of the party without regard to the gender of the party. And I think what he's saying here is that, and I said it on the last podcast, I think kids by nature are drawn to their mothers. It's that, and I know plenty of dads who are amazing. My nephew is like the best new daddy. But just stereotypically, it's that mothers are the nurturing, we kiss the boo-boos, we do the, and that's kind of a dated thing to say. But what he's saying here is just because she's close with her mother, it doesn't mean her mother is capable of taking care of every need effectively and in the way Tylee needs it. You can be close to your kid, but a terrible parent.
True. Exactly.
And I think that's what Joe's saying here. Yeah, she loves her mom. She's close to her. But that doesn't make up for the fact that Lori's reckless with her parenting.
Yep. So he just finishes that out with some other, other things just about, her being reckless and not having Tylee's best interest at heart.
And he also brings up that at this point, I believe the charges were still pending about the molestation in Hays County, Texas. We're not sure if it's the molestation or maybe the assault charge, but they were pending, and it should not be evidence that he could not be the best parent for the child, because at that point there had been no verdict, there had been no hearings about it or no trials, and he's right about that.
Yeah.
You can't take what somebody's accused of, and at this point there have been enough professionals weighing in on Joe due to the evaluations that he had, where at this point there wasn't a big alarm going off that Joseph was an imminent danger to Tylee. And I think that, he feels maybe in the trial he didn't get a fair shake because there were pending charges.
Yeah. And the next document that we move into sheds some light on Vivian Lewis, who did his evaluation. And she brings up some really, big things that, based on her 32 years of experience, she is gravely concerned regarding the reaction of the recommendations in this report by the mother. Miss Lori Vallow, I'm deeply concerned and consider the situation to one labeled as imminent danger of a flight risk, as well as Miss Vallow is a devout Mormon who has mentioned to me, and this is what Lori has told her, that death would be an option before giving Tylee to her father, even for a visit.
That's chilling knowing what we know now.
Yeah. I mean, she says these are real and serious concerns. I have no way of knowing if Miss Vallow was serious, but these are a close repeat of her statement to me.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that eventually Vivian Lewis, I believe, I don't know if she was taken off the case or she stepped off, but she had cancer and she was very sick and eventually couldn't keep up with the demands of her work due to her physical condition. Probably this case alone would be too much. And we were talking about how sad. It seems like Tylee really had one amazing advocate who saw through all of it, and she couldn't finish the case because of her health.
Yeah. And it's another, that they just fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
She goes on to say, Miss Val, she's questioning, she says, it is in my opinion, again, based on my experience and my knowledge of the case, that believing that Miss Vallow would bring the child to the courthouse or to surrender the child to Mr. Ryan are most likely not going to happen. So we see Vivian Lewis she testifies that she wants, or in this affidavit, she makes a statement that Joe should get custody of Tylee.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, so she's making this statement here. I might, with respect, recommend that perhaps a constable and a social worker or Mr. Ware, who Tylee has met, go to the home and get the child. The imminent danger, potential of flight, a flight risk, and we've seen that. or worse, combined with this mother being so adamant that Tylee is being hurt by her father, make the likelihood of her cooperative delivery of this child most unlikely.
Yeah. And at this point, Lori has a legal obligation to give Joe Tylee on the dates that fall under the custody or the visitation schedule. The courts at this point haven't ruled that Joe is a danger to Tylee, and he does get visitation with supervision. But one thing I do want to correct, or not correct, but sort of clarify. In the last podcast, I talked about there being motion detectors in Joseph Ryan's home. And that is something that is put forth in one of these documents. It was a recommendation. We haven't got to the point yet to where we know if they were actually put in place. But I believe they had recommended that a court-appointed chaperone stay in the home overnight when Tylee was staying with Joseph. It was cameras that were put in Lori and Charles's home, and for what reason we do not know yet. I think maybe that's going to come with this dump later of these new documents. But they did recommend that Joseph, or that a motion detector with a light was placed in Joseph's home, I think probably down the hallway where the bedrooms are, just because of the allegations against him at that point. But we're not sure. So I had somebody on Twitter asked me about that, and I thought originally my brain's kind of foggy lately, but we did look, and it was a recommendation. We're just not sure if it ever happened.
Yep.
So we'll keep going. I just thought of that. Sorry, guys.
Yep. So the next document we have is Tylee's overnight bag, and this was really weird.
Yeah, this was weird, but I think maybe I might have figured this one out.
You would think this is her first overnight with her dad, that, you know, the mom would pack the bag, make sure she had everything. And what was in it?
Well, there was a blurry picture, but it includes toy guns, a diaper, a baby blanket, and what appeared to be very small clothes. And the last sentence says, "This is confusing given the mother's keen sense of Tylee's age, size, developmental stage, and interest." And the reason because we were scratching our heads about this for a few days. It's like, none of that is really what a kid needs when they go to their dad's overnight. But I let my daughter pack for the beach one time. We have a house at the beach, and I told her, "Yeah, can I pack?" "Sure, you can pack." But of course, she was 8. At this age, Tylee would have been maybe 6. And I think maybe this bag was packed by Tylee, but it also means that Lori didn't go behind her and see what she needed.
Exactly.
I didn't either. Got to the beach and found out I had to make an emergency trip to Target because she packed nothing she needed. Don't, that's why you don't let your kids pack. But we were so curious about this, but that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think so too.
But why wasn't mom checking to see? Maybe it's a situation where she just was going to let Joseph go buy what she needed. I don't know.
Yeah. So our next document here is a motion to modify, and it is in September of 2008. And we see the order to be modified is the final judgment signed this year after the jury trial in 2007. In that judgment, Lori Vallow is given sole managing
conservatorship.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I got your back.
My tongue was twisted there. And the right to designate the child's residence. Since the jury verdict, the rendition, and the entry of the decree, circumstances have materially and substantially changed, and a modification of the primary residence of the child should be changed.
Yeah, so some of the arguments that Joseph makes is that she hasn't complied with the court's orders in a reasonable fashion, and she is not...
She's frustrated the court's orders.
Thank you. My tongue was tied.
See, there you go.
Oh, gosh.
For a treatment team, has not scheduled meetings with the team, and has not made payments in a timely manner to the team members. And I think as a result of that, the team didn't get to really begin work for 2 to 3 months after the court's order. I mean, 2 to 3 months, that's a long time.
Yeah, and it, to me, it just sort of screams that she's really not focused on Tylee's best interest, because these are, I would assume these treatment teams, maybe, I don't know, but it could be like a psychological visit or with a psychiatrist or a child psychologist. It would all be things that would benefit Tylee in making sure she's taken care of. So to me, it just means that, okay, well, I've got this order. I won by jury. I have her full time. I don't really care what they say I need to do next.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's like a teenager, when you try to tell a teenager what to do and they think they know everything. It's almost like that's her mentality. Mm-hmm. The court can try to tell me what to do, but I'm going to do what I want to do anyways.
Right. And I mean, it's sad that the court never held her accountable, it seems, for a lot of this. I mean, she could have been held in contempt. I mean, just from what we've read so far between the last episode and this one, I mean, he really could have had her in that court once a week.
Yeah.
If you're not giving your child to their other parent as the court deems appropriate, you're in contempt.
Yep. So some more things in this motion. Again, she failed to make payment to the doctor. The treatment team has complained that she's inaccessible and has requested that she return to Austin from Arizona to where she says she has moved. And we know in the court order she wasn't allowed to move.
Right. But I think what they say back here is that she was she was able to determine the residence. But I don't know if the court at that point had still limited her to Travis County, Texas, or because she got sole custody and sort of won that last trial, was she able to move her? But we did.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Know from the papers on the last episode that apparently she was flying Tylee to Texas when it was time for some visitations.
Yeah.
But in moving to Arizona, it really does, because there have been situations where I had a friend who wanted to move and the other parent was fighting it. And the court said, as long as you have that kid here for every single scheduled visitation, I don't care where you move. You can move to Alaska, but every other weekend, every other Wednesday, that kid's got to be in this town ready for visitation.
Yeah.
And probably after, it might have sounded good in the beginning, but once you start making that flight with a 5-year-old, frequently, she probably just let it fall by the wayside and sort of okay, well, whatever, I'm just not going to do it.
Exactly. So then we also see that she lied about Tylee's medical condition in order to skip a visit with her dad. She failed to notify Joe in a timely fashion of serious medical problems and hospitalization of Tylee.
Yeah.
It's just one right after the other.
It really is. And if you kind of put all this stuff in a list of things that Lori did that affected Tylee, not just Joseph, but in the midst of it, Tylee's still smack in the middle. And so when she's not dealing with being potentially coached about being molested, when she's not having to go to the kid exchange just to be given to her dad, she's in the hospital for all these crazy symptoms that they can't find a cause for.
Yeah.
It's just chaos for this poor girl. This really has opened my eyes to, because before we really got these documents, I had just sort of assumed that maybe, Lori was rude to Joseph and probably conditioned her daughter to think her dad was a bad guy. But it's even worse. It's messing around with medical stuff. It's fudging medical documents. And Tylee I probably would think Tylee her whole life sort of felt like one side had one arm, the other side had the other, and it was a tug of war.
Yeah. Yep. It was like Stretch Armstrong, that
Right,
toy
yeah.
as a kid, you
Yeah,
pulled
and
on.
I always used to, the other side would let go and it would pop me in the face. And
Yeah.
I mean, but that's kind of, an analogy for Tylee is that she's being pulled. And every now and then Lori let go of what was trying to sort of be like a stable environment, or what the court was trying to create for her as a stable environment.
Yeah.
And Tylee was the one that got knocked down every time.
Yep, exactly. And then the last thing in this document is the continuing chaos and sexuality at the Vallow house, along with the noncompliance. So there was all kind of stuff going on, and I think we'll see more of that later.
Yeah.
But it was just, all kind of things going on, and Joseph's just worried about Tylee.
Yeah. It's just, he literally, there wasn't really a whole lot that could be said as far as against Joseph in these. And I know you're reading legal papers. We don't know what the phone calls were like. We know what some of the emails were like, but I mean, he seemed really reasonable for the most part. Nobody's perfect. I'm sure he had his flaws, and I'm sure he overstepped boundaries a few times with Lori, but that's just what happens in a divorce. But I mean, she's just off the rails.
Yeah, exactly. So 10 days later, we have another document filed, a report to the court. So it is discussing actually alternative placements for Tylee.
Right.
I was a little bit shocked reading this. I mean, you hear what's going on, you're like, get her out of there. But it talked about Lori living independently in an apartment of her own with her 2 kids, a placement in another person's home.
And the person that they were so they're trying to maybe think about where to put Tylee temporarily until this whole mess gets sorted out. The person, Kate Caswell, she was obviously the one that was staying overnight with Tylee at Joseph's house. So this would have been a familiar person. This is September 22nd, 2008, by the way.
Yep. And that's 10 days after that, the one we just read. It was filed September 12th, 2008. So you see here, the other option was temporary foster care. So that was a little bit, they're trying to, keep, Tylee's best interest at heart. And it talks about, I asked Mr. Ryan about the possibility of Kate Caswell's home as an option for temporary placement. I spoke with Ms. Caswell at length. Unfortunately, there are several reasons that her home would not be a good idea for placement. She has been a committed supervisor for visitation, and she has Tylee's best interest at heart. However, there are personal safety concerns in this case, and Ms. Caswell has had some difficulty conveying behavioral suggestions to Mr. Ryan in the recent past. So,
So clearly he had been a little difficult on some issues too.
Yeah.
With the lady who's supervising the overnights, probably some issues in the home that she observed during those overnights, and I guess he didn't take too kindly to them.
Yep. They talk about, I've consulted with Brian Wheeler, who is a director of Lutheran Social Services, and Leah Brown, the foster placement coordinator for the Austin area. So they've talked to all these people, and they're talking about foster home placement, and they give some stuff about, some kids there that are primarily Tylee's age. But then they come in and say, in review, it does not seem that this arrangement would hamper Tylee's ability to settle into the routine in their home, potentially causing insecurity. I know it would be hard, and I know people that foster children, and the situation has to be right. The environment has to be right.
And I'm going to tell you, you're probably going to be hard-pressed to find people who already have other kids in the home. And then you have the hot mess that is this custody dispute. Lori, Joseph, constantly going at it. Immeasurable amounts of drama. And I think you're just going to be and I think that's kind of what you see here is the people probably would have been wonderful for Tylee, but they don't want everything that's coming with it.
Yeah.
Because then they're going to get drugged right in the middle and it's consuming.
Exactly. And we know we've said from the get-go, this was one of the worst divorce proceedings and custody battles that we've seen.
Oh, it's the worst I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
I'm not even, and I'm sure there's worse out there, but this goes beyond reasonable. This is just vindictive, and it's just, it seems to be mostly one-sided. It seems like Joseph responded. He did what he had to do with his evaluations. We were talking about that picture of him and Tylee in Times Square where she had her little Mary Poppins shirt on. Like they had maybe been to see the play Mary Poppins, and she looked so happy in that picture.
Yeah, it was really cute.
It was, and he looked happy and she looked happy, and oh man, it's just a lot of what ifs. What if he had gotten custody of her in 2007, where we wouldn't even know Tylee's name right now? They'd both probably still be alive.
Yeah, possibly. So we are looking at this next document. It gets crazy. And it is the petition for breach of Rule 11 agreement and rescission. And this is where things get crazy. So Joe is trying to have visitation with Tylee. And, Lori has lied about all kind of facts. She's obstructed and she's prolonged the separation from his daughter. So on a prior occasion, the defendant or one of her agents who had hired two men to tailgate Joe, who was with a chaperone and with his daughter, on his first visit to his home in over 2 years for an overnight visit. So it's been 2 years since he had an overnight visit. And the vehicle was like a dually pickup with a cattle guard on the front. And the incident frightened him so bad that he called the police. And we have to remember that prior to this incident is when Alex Cox assaulted him with a taser. So that was in the parking lot at the Kids Exchange.
In front of Tylee.
Yeah, on the plaintiff's, which was Joe, on Joe's first visit with his daughter in 18 months. So he hadn't seen his kid in 18 months, and Alex Cox assaults him with a taser in front of Tylee.
Right. And in front of Tylee. I mean, I've seen people get tased on TV, and I'm sure to see your dad stiffen up and fall to the ground had to have been traumatic. And I think Joe actually had some lasting health problems from that.
Yeah, I think he broke his wrist and some
hurt
other
his
issues.
back, I believe, too,
Yeah.
which I'm sure probably induced some depression issues. I think that was mentioned that he had struggled with that, or not struggled, but he did have some issues after the tasing incident. But I mean, it's just adding injury to insult. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But it's also, we see that this is 2009. This report was made on September 29th, 2009. And so 11 years ago or more, whenever this happened, you've got Alex doing Lori's dirty work already.
Yep.
This is 11 years from when we find out the kids are deceased, likely at the hands of Alex. And then we find out he tases Joe Ryan.
Yep. So there was another instant at Instance. Sorry, I said instant.
Ooh, we haven't been to the bars, guys. I promise.
Right?
We don't drink
I
like
do
at
not
all,
drink.
but you'd think we were.
So at the child's request, so at Tylee's request, she wanted to go to Barnes & Noble. And this was in Gilbert, Arizona. And upon his arrival, as they entered the store, to Joe's surprise, Lori was with Charles and an unknown male. And Charles, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. So he is the same person that defendant in a deposition testified had hired the two men to tailgate the plaintiff. So Charles had hired the two guys to tailgate Joe. and Joe's chaperone and the child, as described above, that was when they were following him in the dually car. But on arrival at Barnes & Noble, Charles Vallow immediately grabbed the child's arm and simultaneously began using his iPhone to take pictures of the encounter, all in an intimidating manner. So the defendant participated by using her body to shield the child from the plaintiff. The Vallows collective actions caused a public disturbance. I can't imagine.
Oh, man.
Like, I've been in a Barnes & Noble, and it's so quiet in there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's, like, really quiet. So, and all this happened in the entrance of the store. The police were called, and Joe represented to the police in Gilbert that on July 26th, she had a superior right to possession of the child. And that's the Rule 11 agreement. But she made false statements again.
Surprise, surprise.
I know. I mean, she made false statements. And due to Lori's lies, the child was removed from the plaintiff's possession by the police. And, you know, they took her. They took her and gave her back to Lori.
That is traumatizing. 5-year-olds know. Or no, at this point, she might have been, let's see, 2002.
7.
7 years old. You know who the police are. But at 7 years old, you probably associate the police with somebody's about to go to jail.
Yeah.
And then you're doing it in front of the other customers.
She was just going in. I mean, there was a chaperone with him. She was going in to probably buy a book. I mean, that's why you're going in Barnes & Noble.
And if you think about it, if you go back to the body cam footage of when Charles was shot and killed, you can't see Tylee's face because they blurred it out. I would love to see that unblurred just to kind of be able to see her facial expressions, but her face was very red. But I kind of wondered when I saw that, like, why wasn't Tylee more upset? But you kind of see maybe she was sort of used to being around police when it came to her mother or situations where there was conflict. Now, I mean, this is very different. It's kind of hard reading these papers and seeing how, you know, we've said on the last podcast, we believe that Charles just was probably influenced to follow Lori just by default because he's her husband. But we see how that ended up for him. When she was done with Charles, she divorced him, cheated on him, and then, you know, she didn't divorce him. She didn't have time to, or let's see, when he died.
Filed.
Well, when he died,
filed.
they were divorced because
No,
he died.
wasn't. They were still.
That's what I'm saying. The divorce was he died, and Alex killed him.
Yeah.
But it's like you see here how fluid they are together with this whole Tylee thing, and he's helping her, and he's trying to get it to where they have custody of Tylee, but he ends up dead on the floor.
Yeah.
And that goes to show you, Lori, like you said, she's like a tornado. Chews you up, spits you out.
Yeah, it's like a path. You can see wherever she goes. And as soon as somebody doesn't believe like she does or agree or do what she wants, then this is what it turns into.
And here it does say that the defendant has moved to Maricopa County, which is like Phoenix, the Phoenix area, while the motion to modify case is still pending, which is a violation of the Travis County District Court's standing order. So technically legally, she wasn't able to move, but she did.
Exactly.
So again, it's just like, you can tell me this is what I have to do, but this is not what I want to do, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. So this last thing we're going to talk about, put your seatbelt on because it's going to get a little bumpy here. So this last thing is a respondent's motion for contempt and sanctions. So Lori's attorney gets a phone call from Tom Ware's attorney. So we talked about Tom Ware earlier. He was a guardian ad litem on the case at that time. And so Tom Ware's attorney calls Lori's attorney and starts a conversation. And this is attorney to attorney, so I don't guess this would be anything, out of the ordinary. It sounds like they know each other, Well, the conversation starts, and so the attorney suggests that Tom Ware would be willing to change his testimony and opinions in exchange for Lori and her attorney either withdrawing or abating her motion. So at that time, Lori's attorney started taping the conversation. I was like, what?
That is so wrong, ethically, morally, any way you look at it.
Yeah, like, I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever.
0 sense. And I would be surprised if that guy is still a practicing guardian ad litem today. If he wasn't like removed for this, that's sad.
Yeah, so we know he was removed because Mary Fogel, I think's her name, comes in later on. But so there is the transcript of the audio recording, and it's probably 20 pages.
It's so long.
Yeah, and they're talking about Vivian Lewis. So evidently Tom Ware and Vivian Lewis were close friends. They had worked together for 30-something years. And him being a guardian ad litem and her being the psychologist. So she read right through Lori's actions and wanted to place Tylee with Joe. And it seems that Tom was going along with her, that there's a statement made that he really wanted to side with Lori, but he didn't want to go against Vivian's recommendation, so he's just going to go along with what Vivian says. So it's just back and forth trying to convince Lori's attorney that if they'll take out the motion to remove Tom Ware, that he'll change his testimony.
That is sick.
Yeah.
Because you're putting a kid at risk. And at this point, if you're working with somebody, and these people work on multiple cases together, it's not like he barely knows her. And so I'm sure he knows that she is probably trusted, credible, and her assessments are right on. And it's really, I don't think I've really seen it a lot where a guardian and a psychologist who are kind of on the same team would disagree. Because your job is to figure out the best possible scenario for Tylee. And I think it speaks volumes if this Virginia, who seems to be one
Vivian.
Oh gosh.
It's okay. It's Vivian.
I need like something written in front of me right now. But for him to offer to do this, is he just worried he's going to look bad? And he says, okay, hey, her complaints about me, Lori's complaints to me, and what we read earlier about what he wasn't doing. Okay, if those are true, he should be removed.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to make a statement that, basically it's blackmail.
Yeah.
If you remove me from this, then I'll, go and say what you want me to say.
Yeah.
That's obviously, it's another time that Tylee was failed.
Right. This guy's more worried maybe about his reputation as opposed to making sure she's with the right person. And I don't see how you would go against somebody who has 30-something years of experience in a very delicate field and say, well, I was going to go with her, but hey, if you withdraw that is just putting Tylee to the side.
Yeah. It's selfish people.
And
are you doing it because you don't want to be dismissed? I don't know. Does it look bad for a guardian ad litem to be dismissed from a case? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm sure it does because guardians are the kid's advocate. They're their voice. So if you're removed because you're not doing your job, it's not going to look good for you.
Exactly.
But I hope this guy was stripped of the right to be a guardian ad litem.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know, but can it get any crazier?
Could it get any worse for Tylee? We know the end result, and it did get worse for her. But, man, it's enraging to think of all of these trained professionals who deal in family courts who just dropped the ball with this kid.
Yeah, and again, we see Lori is the master manipulator.
Oh, my gosh. When we started reading up on this case in December, the one thing that I've learned covering trials is that expect the unexpected. What you think you know about people, when the facts start coming out, you're going to learn a lot more. I never could have, in a million years, pegged Lori as somebody who has constantly done what is in the worst interest of her kid and in her mind, what is Lori's best interest. I don't even know that you could say, how could you love your child and do these things? How could you? It just seems to me like, why would Lori not just give her to Joseph? And that's because of money.
Yeah. Yep.
Because she sure wasn't looking out for her.
No, but she did win that $17,000 on Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, we're trying to find that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to see that. That would be so interesting. But, she was like, what, try to win Miss Texas and just me. And some of the worst parents that I've ever seen are the ones that are me.
Yeah.
But this is another level.
Exactly.
This is just, you're dealing with a situation where I can't imagine the lack of self-esteem maybe Tylee had, or the feeling of maybe feeling unimportant. But I do love the fact that what we've learned about Tylee is, in spite of all this, she was very vocal about what was right and what was wrong. And sometimes, when you come from the school of hard knocks, and you kind of grow up on your own, you do learn the way the world works a lot sooner than your peers. I just hate that we didn't get to see that spunk as an adult. I think she maybe could have done something really awesome with her life, just with her situation.
Yep, I agree.
Well, I think that's going to be it for us tonight.
Yeah.
We still have so much more to go.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff coming out. Ton of more documents.
Yeah, there's more stuff coming out. We're going to read through them first. I don't know. I know some of the documents have to do with Charles and Cheryl's divorce. I don't really know that we're going to talk about that on here. I just don't want to start getting into everybody's backstory.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's really pertinent to the deaths of JJ and Tylee. That's sort of Charles's old family's drama. And I mean, you could let us know what you think, but there are going to be ways for you to see it online. We'll give you some links for Wicked Truths and F-bomb sites if you want to dive into that. What do you think, Fruit Loop? I just don't know that that's a rabbit hole. I don't really feel like we need to bring Charles's ex-wife and kids into just their divorce. If it comes in another way, maybe. But just their divorce really isn't.
Yeah, we're trying to stick to, the stuff that has to do with Tylee and JJ and giving you guys just a glimpse into their their life and everything. So,
but we'll read through, and I'm sure there'll be things we can definitely talk about. We'll just kind of grab what's important and just leave all the other he said, she said, because that's in every divorce case, and I don't really care to hear about their, back and forth about this is how he's horrible, this is how she's horrible. It just,
And we've had some people ask about how to listen to prior episodes, and you can do that on our website, which is www.prettyliesandalibis.org. And you have the Twitter stuff, right?
Yeah, our Twitter handle is Pretty Lies Alibi, at Pretty Lies Alibi. We couldn't fit it all in there. We're on Facebook under Pretty Lies and Alibis. So few ways to reach out to us and just give us some comments, give us some ideas of what you want to hear about, and we'll do our best to make it happen.
Yep.
All right, guys.
You guys have a good evening. Paige, again, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Paige. All right, have a good night.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, Saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.